All right, good evening, everybody. We're going to call to order the Tuesday, November 16th meeting of the Corte Madera Town Council. Oh, gavels over there, bang. Rebecca, could we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Lee.
Present.
Councilmember Mongan. Councilmember Ravazio.
Here.
Vice Mayor Casissa.
Here.
Mayor Beckman.
Here, thank you. Please join me in the salute to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everybody. That brings us to open time for public comment, and this is an opportunity for members of the public to speak on any items that are not on tonight's agenda, and members of the public will be given 3 minutes apiece. So if there's anybody on the line here who'd like to talk to us about anything not on the agenda, please go ahead and raise your hand on Zoom here and we'll bring you on, or you can email public comment at tcmmail.org. And I'll start by asking Rebecca if we got any emailed public comments.
Let me just check one more time. I checked before the meeting and we had not yet received any emailed public comments. Thank you, Mayor Beckman. No, we did not receive any emailed public comments.
Okay, great, thank you. And we've got pretty good attendance tonight, but I'm not seeing any hands up from the folks on the line. So we're gonna go ahead and close open time and move on. We have no presentations tonight, which brings us to item 4 on tonight's agenda, the consent calendar. These are items that are routine or have been previously discussed and do not require any further discussion. And any member of the council or public can pull an item from the consent calendar for discussion if they'd like to. Would any members of the council like to pull any consent calendar items? And seeing none, we'll turn it over to the public. If any members of the public would like to pull a consent calendar item to discuss tonight, please go ahead and raise your hand via Zoom here or email public comment at tcmmail.org. And Rebecca, did we get any public comment emails on any consent calendar items? Oops, you're muted.
Thank you. No, we did not receive any emailed public comments on consent calendar items.
Great, thank you. And I'm not seeing any hands up from the folks on the line, so we'll close public comment and bring the consent calendar back to the council for a motion. Bob?
I move to approve items 4A through 4H.
Thank you, sir. Do we have a second? Great, thank you, Fred. And Rebecca, could we have a vote, please?
Councilmember Lee.
Yes.
Councilmember Mongan.
Yeah.
Councilmember Ravazio.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Casissa.
Yes.
Mayor Beckman.
Yes, thank you very much. That concludes the consent calendar and brings us to our public hearings. And our first public hearing tonight is item 5A. And this is related to the modification of the Muni Code at modifying chapter Title 18 and adding a Title 22 related to objective design and development standards for multifamily housing. And I'm going to turn it over to our intrepid planning staff who have put a lot of work into this.
Thank you so much, Mayor and council members. I'm just going to give some brief opening remarks and then hand it over to Martha Battaglia, who's really led the charge on this project, which has been a significant amount of work over the last 2 years. We actually started in October of 2019, so it's very excited to bring this project before you this evening and this ordinance before you this evening. Really, it's an important ordinance in the sense that over the last several years, as many of you know, state law has really, for certain types of housing projects, multifamily housing projects, has taken away some of the local discretion that the town has. And so this is really a reaction to some of that state legislation and puts in place some local development and design standards intended to ensure that if housing does get proposed under the state legislation, it still meets the town's vision for appropriate type of development in town. So I do want to thank a couple of people, especially I should say groups, we did assemble a working group for this project, a technical advisory working group made up of community members and also experts, including Bill Rose, a urban planner, Rich Pearlstein, a local architect. We also had our mayor, Eli Beckman, on the panel, as well as in the group, Patty Stoldier, who you'll hear from this evening, as well as a community representative. And I think I am forgetting Phyllis Metcalf, of course, our planning commissioner. So I wanted to thank them for their input and their diligence in reviewing a lot of the documents that came before staff and serving as a sounding board for us, as well as the planning commission itself as well, which, as you'll hear, did review this ordinance prior to this evening. So with that, I do want to hand it over to Martha, and we'll be available for questions at the end of the presentation.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and members of the council. I'm going to share my screen. And can everyone see that? Okay. Well, as Adam mentioned, this evening you'll be considering an ordinance amendment related to the Objective Design and Development Standards, which we commonly refer to as ODDS, or the ODDS Toolkit. And the ordinance amendment includes the new title, Title 22, and also accompanying amendments to both Titles 15 and 18. So to start off with a little bit of background, the town received a $160,000 planning grant in 2019, and we've been working collaboratively with other Marin County jurisdictions on several projects. The majority of grant funds that we received have been used to create the Objective Design and Development Standards. We also used some of the funds to create an accessory dwelling unit workbook and website. This project has been completed. And lastly, we worked on an inclusionary zoning study. We're actually still in the middle of working on that project, and an ordinance amendment related to the town's inclusionary policies will be before you sometime next year. So there are kind of two different phases of the toolkit, both a phase 1 and a phase 2. And the immediate purpose of the toolkit is that it allows the town to address both current and future state housing legislation that is intended to limit our local control. And the ordinance amendment before you this evening addresses phase 1. The ordinance amendment does not include any changes to things such as density or floor area. And it is very likely that when we get to the phase 2 component, that there will be some changes to increase allowable densities and floor areas of certain parcels. And this will be necessary in order for us to develop a compliant housing element. Housing is currently permitted in the majority of Corte Madera. The general plan includes several mixed-use land use designations. These were created in 2009, and these mixed-use designations allow for residential uses. And one of the goals stated in the general plan is to create multifamily design guidelines, which this project helps us achieve. This shows the land use diagram for the town. And there are 4 mixed-use land designations. This includes the mixed-use commercial, which is shown in blue. And these parcels with this designation are located along corridors. There's also the mixed-use square, which is shown in this kind of indigo purple color, which is located near Old Town. And then there is the mixed-use regional serving, which is the village. And lastly, there's the mixed-use gateway area, which is the Tam Ridge site, which has been developed with housing already. And so as Adam mentioned, there have been many state housing laws in recent years, and these bills have been aimed at increasing the supply of housing in the state. These laws restrict the town's power to apply discretionary design standards to multi-family housing projects. And this includes any proposed duplexes we may see in single-family districts pursuant to the recently adopted Senate Bill 9. The toolkit includes a variety of objective standards that will be applied to housing projects that utilize these pieces of legislation to either bypass or limit the town's discretionary review process. And I'd like to point out that Corte Madera is currently not subject to Senate Bill 35. However, it is likely that at some point in the next housing element cycle, we will be. The state determines which jurisdictions are subject to SB 35, and it's based on the number of permits that have been issued to satisfy a jurisdiction's regional housing needs allocation. Senate Bill 9 was recently signed in September. This legislation will take effect on January 1st, 2022. And in a nutshell, it allows for a homeowner to legally split their single family lot into 2 parcels. And each parcel that is created must be a minimum size of 1,200 square feet. The lot split cannot include a demolition of any affordable housing or housing occupied by a tenant in the past 3 years. And a jurisdiction may adopt objective standards used to evaluate projects submitted under Senate Bill 9. However, these standards cannot preclude the development of at least 2 800 square foot units. So many of the recently adopted housing bills preclude a jurisdiction from applying non-objective development standards in the evaluation of a housing project. And an objective standard is defined in state legislation. This slide includes examples of both objective and non-objective development standards. And the toolkit, which has been incorporated into the ordinance amendment, only includes objective standards. Title 18 of the Municipal Code does include some limited objective standards. The existing objective standards include such things as setbacks, height, floor area ratio, density, parking, uses, and some limited standards for lighting, screening, and landscape standards. There currently are no standards in our zoning ordinance related to design. And one of the primary goals of the toolkit is to achieve the same quality of design which would have been achieved using a discretionary process such as design review. For phase 1 implementation, the toolkit will be required to be used for any project that is submitted where the town does not have discretion. So this would include projects submitted under Senate Bill 35 and Senate Bill 9. And as I mentioned, currently the town is not subject to Senate Bill 35. For projects that are filed consistent with the Housing Accountability Act, an applicant will inform the town at the onset if they are using the objective standards in Title 18 or in Title 22. And for both for projects that are submitted under the Housing Accountability Act, projects will continue to be reviewed by the Planning Commission. As Adam mentioned, this has been a fairly long process, just over 2 years now. And at the onset of the process, we formed a technical advisory working group, and they're really helped kind of guide the development of the toolkit into the form that you see before you this evening. The working group provided comments, and they also made recommendations on how to implement the toolkit in Corte Madera. The working group was comprised of 6 members, as mentioned by Adam, and the working group members have had diverse backgrounds and perspectives, which really helped shape the toolkit. There have been multiple meetings, both with the working group and also the Planning Commission. One of the meetings was a joint meeting between the advisory group and the Planning Commission meeting. And the input and feedback that was received by both the working group and the commission has informed the customization of the toolkit. The toolkit was developed by Opticos Design, and they are a design firm out of Berkeley. And Opticos has developed many of the form-based codes for communities in California. The goal of the toolkit is to create a walking and engaging neighborhood. And one of the reasons it achieves this is by pulling buildings closer to the street and locating parking behind the buildings. The toolkit prepared by Opticos included 8 zones. These zones range from lower intensity neighborhoods to higher intensity neighborhoods and main streets. And the zones are based on both the location and the context of the area in which they are located. The toolkit that was received by Opticos is customizable, and each jurisdiction will customize it to meet their needs. The town's customized toolkit includes 4 of the 8 zones, which I'll describe further in subsequent slides. These next 2 slides include a variety of standards in the toolkit. And while this is not an exhaustive list, it does show many of the standards that are in the toolkit. And the toolkit includes standards related to such things as form, parking, landscaping, screening, retaining walls, slopes, privacy, and building types. And again, this slide shows some of the additional standards. The toolkit includes 8 zones, and these zones range from less urban to more urban. This first slide shows the first 4 zones, and 3 of the zones have been identified as existing in Corte Madera. The customized toolkit includes the T3 Edge neighborhood zone as well, and this zone is being applied to any single-family parcels in the event a project is submitted under Senate Bill 9. And this shows the 4 more intensive zones in the toolkit, which include the T4 Core Main Street, T4 Main Street Small, and then the T5 neighborhood zones. And you'll notice that Corte Madera is not adopting the 3 most intensive zones in the toolkit. Again, the Corte Madera toolkit includes 4 of the 8 zones, as highlighted in red. And the T3 Edge neighborhood zone is only being adopted for the state housing bills that allows duplexes in single-family zones. The toolkit has been organized into 12 chapters, as shown on this slide. And 2 of the chapters, chapters 8 and 9, have been removed from the Corte Madera toolkit. And instead, these standards in these chapters have been incorporated into a standalone design guideline document. Okay, this shows some pages from chapter 3, which is the zone chapter. And this is an important chapter in that it includes the various development standards for all of the zones that are being adopted. The development standards for each zone include such things as setbacks, height, parking, and allowable encroachment. So as I mentioned, chapters 8 and 9 of the toolkit have been removed. These include standards, architectural standards, and signage standards. And this change was made based on feedback from both the working group and the Planning Commission. Both the working group and Planning Commission felt that these standards in these chapters were overly prescriptive in both the regulation of design and architectural style. So instead, these chapters have been created a new standalone document, and applicants will still be required to use these standards as they develop their projects. However, they will not be required to design the project to meet all of the various standards. And the ordinance amendment also includes a new design review finding related to these guidelines. As part of the ordinance amendment, the zone is being assigned to parcels in town that allow multifamily dwellings. And this includes both parcels with a mixed-use general plan use designation, in addition to parcels that are zoned R2, which is the low-density multiple dwelling zoning district. Parcels shown in yellow have been mapped with the T4 suburban neighborhood small. The parcels shown in orange are mapped with the T4 core neighborhood medium zone, and parcels shown in purple are mapped with the T4 core Main Street zone. And that zone has only been applied to parcels near Main Park. And also the T3 Edge neighborhood zone will be applied to all single-family zoning districts if a project is submitted under Senate Bill 9. And the zones that were selected for the parcels correspond to the allowable heights that are permitted under existing zoning districts. So the ordinance amendment incorporates the various standards in the toolkit into a new title in the municipal code. These standards will live in Title 22, and Title 22 includes the standards that will be used to evaluate qualifying multifamily housing projects that are submitted to the town. And in addition, amendments are also proposed, accompanying amendments are proposed to Titles 15 and 18 to ensure internal consistency in the municipal code. An amendment is proposed to Chapter 15.50 trees. State law precludes the jurisdiction from requiring a discretionary permit for certain multifamily housing projects. And currently, a tree permit is required when certain types of trees are removed that have a circumference more than 50 inches. Tree permit is a discretionary permit, and as such, it cannot be required if trees are removed under Title 22. So Title 22 does include a replacement planting standard, which requires 2 24-inch box trees be planted for every tree removed that has a circumference of 30 inches or greater. And this, the 30 inches or greater circumference is the same standard that's included in the town's accessory dwelling unit ordinance. Amendments are also proposed to Chapter 1802. This chapter is being revised, the application section, to state the types of projects that Title 22 will apply to. And this includes both multifamily or mixed-use housing development when a project requests permit streamlining in compliance with state laws, and also any developments that meet the criteria of Senate Bill 9. Amendments are also proposed to the definitions chapter. Staff evaluated overlapping definitions that existed both within the zoning ordinance and the odds toolkit. And several of the definitions in Chapter 1804 are being replaced with the definition that was in the toolkit. Now, the definitions that are being revised include accessory structure, buildable area, building, dwelling unit, non-conforming structure, and non-conforming use. And lastly, Chapter 1830, the design review chapter, is being amended. And this chapter is being amended to include a new finding related to the architectural and signage design guidelines for multifamily housing. This finding will apply to any multiple dwelling project where design review is required. And the finding in the draft ordinance states that for multiple dwelling projects, including multiple dwellings proposed as part of a mixed-use project, the project incorporates elements of the architectural and signage design guidelines for multifamily housing as may be amended to inform the project design. And staff recommends that the word inform be replaced with enhance. The Planning Commission held a public hearing on October 12th to consider the draft ordinance amendment. And the Planning Commission adopted a resolution recommending that the Town Council adopt an ordinance to adopt a new title, Title 22, and to amend Chapters 1550, 1802, 1804, and 1830. The Planning Commission did recommend 2 modifications to the draft ordinance, which include incorporating changes to the objective standards related to Senate Bill 9, and also revising a section to include that chain link fences are not allowed. And there are 3 options available to the council this evening. First, the council may adopt the ordinance as presented to amend Chapters 1550, 1802, 1804, and 1830, and to adopt a new Title 22. 2, council may direct staff to make changes to the proposed ordinance and bring back the ordinance for the council to consider reintroducing at a future meeting. Or lastly, the council may continue the item to a future date. And this concludes staff's presentation, and both Adam and I are available for any questions.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Martha, and thank you, Adam, for that presentation and for all the work that you guys have put into this over the last couple of years. We'll take questions from council members now. Do we have any questions for staff? Leela.
Thanks. Just a couple questions. The changes that were recommended by the Planning Commission, those are reflected in these documents?
Yes, they are.
Okay.
Yes.
And then I just wonder if you could talk a little bit about what these standards would apply to. I know you've covered that, but I think I can imagine if someone was watching, they might find it a little confusing. Because there are zones that it applies to, and then other zones it doesn't apply to, but even within those zones, it only applies to certain projects. I wonder if you could just kind of like reiterate that a little bit.
Yep, definitely. So certain pieces of state law remove all discretion from us when we're reviewing a development application. And those bills, there's 2 main bills, Senate Bill 35 and Senate Bill 9. So really the only one we are subject to now is Senate Bill 9, and that's the legislation that allows the homeowner to divide their property and add a duplex. Or alternatively, they can add a duplex to an existing single family parcel developed with a home. So if we receive any projects submitted under Senate Bill 9, they would be required to use the toolkit. And then there's kind of a different group of projects are projects where we still maintain discretion and we still can go through the design review process. So in those instances, the applicant will select to either use the standards in the toolkit, so this new Title 22, or to use the standards in the zoning ordinance. And the reason we did that is because for many projects, it's not really feasible to use the development standards in the toolkit. For example, if there's an existing commercial development where the existing buildings are set back from the street, the toolkit really encourages buildings to be closer to the street. So it may not work, if they're just kind of adding on to an existing shopping center to use the toolkit. So they have the option to use, either the existing standards in the ordinance or these new standards. And in both cases, it would still require discretionary design review at the Planning Commission.
Thank you. And then just one other question is sort of, if you guys could talk a little bit about what your sort of communications plans are about this, just so that people, aren't surprised if the duplex goes up next door.
Yeah. So, obviously we've been maintaining a project webpage that we've been adding all of the meeting information to. As far as, in the future, when we receive an application under Senate Bill 9, where a duplex is proposed, I think we probably would do some sort of notification. We haven't really talked about what that would look like yet, but there probably would be something we would want to do to notify the neighbors, before something was being constructed.
Yeah, just to add to that, just when we're talking about Senate Bill 9, that obviously isn't effective yet. It will be as of January 1st, 2022. And so that is something we can certainly work on, is communication related to that Senate bill as we learn more, and things such as notification and whatnot to give to neighbors. Just to sort of elaborate a little bit, we're also not subject to SB 35 right now. And so those projects have not been submitted to the town, even though that was adopted in 2017, I believe. We don't expect that any projects under that bill to come forward anytime soon, although certainly into the future that could happen. And in any case, I don't think we're expecting it to be all of a sudden like the clock, it strikes midnight and we're hit with a flood of applications as of January 1st. So, that's maybe just to help with expectations a little bit. But certainly there's a lot of attention going to be focused on it, and we're going to learn more. And as people learn more, we have been putting out, I think we did put out a message to our community through our website around webinars that are going on related to SB 9 to learn more about these bills. I think there was a state senator had one recently that we publicized as much as we could, and so on. So we'll continue to do that as well as we see important information sharing opportunities with residents and our community members.
Great questions, Leela. Thank you. Any other questions from council members? Fred.
Yeah, because I like simplification. Just to further simplify this, beginning, I want to say after January 1st, so I live in Marin Estates, 6,000 square foot lot plus or minus. I walk into the Planning Commission saying, I want to apply to build a duplex, split the lot, build a duplex, and now I would wind up with 3 units. As long as it meets the standards and objectives that we're looking at tonight, the town would have to approve, still go to the Planning Commission, but it would have to be approved. And then if it's approved, is there any process for somebody to try to appeal that? And let me know if I'm on the right track. I'm trying to give an example, I guess.
Yeah, so in that case, it would not go to the Planning Commission. It would be reviewed by staff. So staff would be evaluating the project and making sure it conforms with the objective standards in the zone, the T3 edge zone that would be applied to all single family parcels. And there's kind of 2 different scenarios related to Senate Bill 9. The first scenario is someone can come in, your existing 6,000 square foot house, and propose a duplex in the rear of the property. Senate Bill 9 does allow for reduced side yard and rear yard setbacks. So, you potentially could have a duplex. There are some standards that would apply. We have a floor area standard, which limits the development on a particular parcel. And for most parcels, it's around 40%. For smaller parcels, it's a little bit higher. So that would continue to apply. But regardless of kind of existing development on a site, the state legislation says you need to allow at least 2 800 square foot units. So even if there was a situation where you're already at your maximum development potential, you could potentially still do up to 2 800 square foot units. So that's kind of the first component of SB9, where you have an existing home and you propose either 1 or 2 new homes. The next piece is you can subdivide your existing parcel, and each parcel that you create needs to be at least 1,200 square feet, and you can do up to 2 units on each parcel. With any kind of new piece of legislation, there's some kind of things that are still being sorted through, and kind of a lot of unanswered questions. So we anticipate getting some direction from the state kind of on some of these to provide a little bit more direct direction on the implementation of the bill.
Okay.
I don't know if you want to add on to that.
And then is there an appeal process if neighbors decide we don't like this, we don't want this?
There is not.
No.
Okay. And then one last question is, because my eyes are not the strongest, Christmas Tree Hill, what zone are they in? And does all this apply to them? Because I know up there's issues with parking, limited street size, wildlife, urban, fire, urban, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so the zone being assigned to Christmas Tree Hill is the T3 Edge Neighborhood Zone, which again, that zone is being applied to all single family parcels in the town. In certain cases, the building official can make a determination based on a preponderance of evidence that it's not, I don't have the exact words in front of me. Amy, I don't know if you have it.
Yeah, I do. If there's a specific adverse impact, which is a significant, quantifiable, direct, and unavoidable impact based on an objective, identified, written public health or safety standards, policies, or conditions as they existed on the date the application was complete. So if a building official can make written findings that it's basically a danger to health and safety, then you can. We have some questions about how that all works because it's not explained in the bill. It implies that there would be some type of hearing or some type of appeal, but it's not in the bill. So I'll be honest that the jurisdictions around California are all kind of puzzling over certain aspects of the bill. But there are some small areas where perhaps there would be some ability to stop a project, but there's not much.
And I would note that in another section of the bill, it also says that there are specific areas where the bill would not apply, and it calls out areas of basically high fire hazard severity zones, such as Christmas Tree Hill, but it notes that it doesn't apply as long as they meet building code and fire code regulations for fire safe, basically construction, which all of our buildings up on Christmas Tree Hill are required to do. So it would be hard to say that in and of itself is enough evidence, because they're specifically saying that it still applies in those areas for that reason. So.
Right, there's a few small areas where historic districts, and there's a few small exceptions, most of which won't apply to Corte Madera.
It sounds like there may be a few pieces of this that are still maybe open for interpretation.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a typical California bill where they pass something and then we'll kind of figure it out later, or the verbiage is so broad, it's left open again for interpretation. Thanks, and thanks for all your hard work, Mary, on this.
Thanks, Fred. Let's go to Bob.
Just to follow up on that, I mean, didn't we overwrite the law last year and impose a limit on the number of ADUs on Christmas Tree Hill?
We did,
Right.
yes. We adopted an ordinance that included all types of ADUs, even ADUs created from existing spaces, that they counted towards the cap.
So does this override that then? It does. So
Yes.
this basically opens up Christmas Tree Hill to just about anything anybody wants to do. If they want to put duplexes in, they can do it without worrying about parking or anything else.
There is room for, and this is something that maybe we'll bring back to council. There are the SB 9 gives a few areas where a locality can pass an ordinance, and it can require parking, one parking space. I think there's a few small areas, so we can come back to council addressing some of those small areas.
What about road width? No.
No,
Wow.
no, there's a lot. And we are obviously not the only jurisdiction who has this concern, since, California jurisdictions that are in high fire, we're not the only one. So we anticipate that the California Department of Housing and Community Development will put out some guidance on this. But right now, everyone is really scrambling about this.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bob. Any other questions from council members? And if not, I've just got a couple. So the first one, Martha, when you put up that zone map, I think we saw some like colored zones along basically like the main thoroughfares and then kind of our main commercial areas. But most of Corte Madera was just white, and it looked like that was referred to as open zone in the legend there. But I understand that those are all those T3 edge neighborhoods. Is that correct? So like the vast majority of Corte Madera that is currently single family residences, that's T3 edge. Is that right?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. And then another question I had, a smaller question, but chapter 15.5 talking about trees and basically having our tree permit program overridden by state law. So I just wanted to understand, do these changes mean that a developer, if they were doing a project under SB 9, for example, could remove like say a mature redwood tree with no permit, no oversight, as long as they replace that mature redwood tree with two little 24-inch box trees?
That is correct. And currently the same applies for if someone removes a tree and constructs an accessory dwelling unit. They are required to replant I think it's a 24-inch box tree, but there is no permit required to remove that tree. So it's similar to our accessory dwelling unit ordinance. But yeah, essentially, if you removed a permit-sized tree, and we defined it as any tree over 30 inches, which is a little bit less than for tree permits 50 inches. If you remove a 30-inch circumference tree, you would need to replace it with two new 24-inch box trees.
Okay, thank you. And then last question, I think, is for Amy. Still just trying to kind of understand, and again, if I get that you may not have this information yet, but trying to understand the health and public safety impacts that could potentially stop a project. It sounds like something like, if we could, if traffic studies had shown that a project was going to cause, ultimate gridlock, or if we determined that the current infrastructure in the area, say like the sewer main, didn't have the capacity to serve a project that was being proposed, those even situations like that are not considered grounds or adequate public health and safety considerations to stop a project.
Well, all we have right now is the definitions in the statute. And what happens with a new law is one of three things, or all of three things. The legislature gets enough feedback that they say, we need to refine this law, we need to do some cleanup. I wouldn't be shocked if some of that happens. Second is the state agency responsible for enforcement will issue some regulations or some guidance that will clarify. I expect the state Housing and Community Development will do that, but they, like everyone, there's been so much housing law passed that they are behind. And so I expect it will take them some time. Or third, cities and towns are going to make these findings and it'll go to court and the court will decide, yes, this is enough. No, it's not enough. And we will learn through the courts about what gets interpreted as, yes, this meets the health and safety standard, and no, it doesn't. So without it, we kind of just have the language of the statute. And so we look, you know, is this, and we do our best guess of saying, does this meet the standard? And, you know, it does make the building official is gonna, I mean, it's a weird thing because it has the building official make the statement where honestly, you probably are gonna need maybe fire department weigh in, and you may need, you know, DPW to weigh in on other aspects. But if we think there truly is a safety and we can make a finding, then we go ahead and make that finding. And then if it gets challenged in the court, we'll see what the court says. So with a new piece of legislation, you're sort of doing the best that you can in trying to interpret it. And we watch as cases come down and tell us, you know, what we think.
Got it. Thank you. And we're about to go to public comment here, but I just saw a hand go up from Chris Ragland, our building official. So I'm wondering if we can maybe bring him over and make him a panelist in case he has something to contribute to this discussion.
I just moved him.
Great. Thank you.
Hi there. Yeah, I just wanted to add really quickly, this is Chris Ragland, that many times in the situation, the building official can be the one that signs off with approval from the other agencies, departments, but being that point person, even in the code, it has sections in the administrative part that talks about the final approval being through, say, the building department with approval from other agencies, departments, and other adopted law. So like, who's the person at the end is going to say, okay, this is approved? And many times it can be the building official with all the other lead work done.
Got it. Thank you. All right, we're going to do one last call for any last questions from council members before we go to public comment here. Fred?
Yeah, just a quick question, Amy, which I don't know if you would know this because it may be totally premature. If the building department did come back and say, no, they're declining a project due to public safety, they have the supporting documentation, I'll say from the fire department and whatever other agencies, is there an appeal process through the town, or is that just flat out court time?
That is such a good question that all of the lawyers around the state are pondering. I would anticipate that there would need to be some kind of some appeal to that, but it certainly isn't in the statute, and it's certainly not clear. So that one is going to be really interesting to play out. You know, we're watching, we're communicating with other city attorneys. There was just a, you know, about how people are addressing and so forth. And so I think, you know, we're all going to kind of learn as we go, but there's no clear answer to that question.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Fred. Any last questions from council members? All right, and if not, we're going to go ahead and open this up to the public. So any members of the public on the line who would like to comment on this item, please go ahead and raise your hand here via Zoom, or email publiccomment@tcmmail.org, and we'll bring you on to speak. And we'll be doing 3 minutes a person. We're going to start with Roy and then go on to Patty.
Good evening, it's Roy Wolford. On the tree issue, this is, I understand people love trees and trees have their place. And the mayor mentioned a redwood tree, and it's not nice to have a redwood tree, a massive one, 50 feet tall, next to your house, raining down debris on all times of the year, clogging gutters, and blocking 50% of solar panel generation in the fall, winter, and springtime. What provisions have been built into this ordinance to protect an adjoining property owner who's being negatively impacted by a nuisance tree? Because there's some property owners that'll plant a little box tree and it gets up to 20, 30, 40, 50 feet tall. And they won't go and maintain them. And there has to be a protection. Now, I talked to the state about that, and there is a protection, but the property owner who's being negatively impacted has to sue the other property owner. That's nuts. So there has to be protection against nuisance trees and property owners that don't take care of their property and negatively impact adjoining property owners. Thank you.
Thank you, Roy. And just so folks know, we're going to go through public comment and let everybody speak. And then once we bring it back to the council, we'll start by asking staff to address any of the points or questions that were raised by residents. So we're going to go to Patty next, followed by Pat.
Good evening. I just wanted to add, having worked on the project, that when people ask me what it was all about, I know that you folks on the council totally understand the legislation, but what I told people is that the state wanted to create more housing in California, so they devised these state laws that would provide more housing and remove the stumbling blocks of having to go through the planning commission, as long as it met these objective standards and would fit in with the feel of Corte Madera. So it's hundreds and hundreds of pages to say that here's what Corte Madera should feel like. And if you want to build something and go using this shortcut, then you're going to have to meet these standards for your project. And I think the consultants did a wonderful job. I think Martha was outstanding in leading us through this process, and thank you to that. And I think that it's something that the standards can be used wider than just for these projects. I think it really does give a good impression of what Corte Madera should continue to look like by using these standards. So thank you to everybody for working on this, and I hope that it goes smoothly.
Great, thank you very much, Patty. And we're going to go to Pat next.
Hi, thank you, Eli, Mayor, and also to the committee that did all the work on this. I know it was substantial. I kept seeing the meetings and thinking, oh my gosh, really appreciate the density of the material coming at them. I want to say I really support protecting the public safety. If you need to come back with specific ordinances about certain areas that are just very difficult to add any density to, that I would really encourage that. But most importantly, my question is, there are two different efforts that I know of going on to basically go back to the US Constitution, which states that any matter not covered in the Constitution is hereby relegated to the most local form of government. And land use is one of those things. So even though I support affordable housing and really love some of the creative initiatives that we're talking about now with affordable housing, I also strongly support local control of land use. And I'm wondering if Corte Madera, while the state is going through all these machinations, figuring out where these laws are going to go, whether Corte Madera has given any consideration to supporting these local control initiatives going on. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pat. I'm not seeing any other hands up right now, so we'll just make another call in case anyone on the line wants to comment. And in the meantime, I'll ask Rebecca if we got any emailed public comments on this item.
Thank you, Mayor Beckman. No, we did not receive any emailed public comments on this item.
Okay, great. Thank you. And I do not see any other hands up from our residents on the line. So we will go ahead and close public comment and bring it back to the council. And I think we'll start by asking staff. I think really the one specific point that was brought up by residents was about the nuisance tree issue. So I guess if you guys can just answer that question, and then we'll go to any comments from council members and discussion.
So there are some provisions in the municipal code that regarding trees and as they relate to views and sunlight. So if someone plants a tree and it impacts neighboring properties or either view that they had or sunlight, there is a process that's established through the municipal code. So there are, some recourses of what, an individual with concerns if it relates to those two things that they can do. I can't think of anything else, Adam. I don't know.
Yeah. Also, I think if it was something was really just that, a public nuisance with respect to a tree as it relates to property values in the neighborhood or other surrounding neighbors, potentially could rise to the level of a nuisance according to our ordinance. And ultimately that would be something that would be brought to the council. The council would have to make that determination as to whether or not a public nuisance exists, etc. So it's not something that really is able to be handled through objective design standards, but we, in this particular ordinance, in my view, we have other provisions of the code, as Martha said, and also the nuisance ordinance that could be employed in egregious certain circumstances. And certainly the view and sunlight preservation ordinance, I think, speaks to those two issues, and a process is designed in the municipal code to deal with trees as that affects neighbors.
Okay, great. Thank you. And with that, we're going to move on to council discussion. So I'll invite any council members who'd like to start us off on just sharing their thoughts on this. Go ahead, Bob.
Well, first off, I want to say thank you to the committee who did this. Eli, you guys did a great job. This is a massive amount of work. The detail on this is incredible. And I just want to thank everyone who worked on this and staff who worked on this. I think we need to go ahead and do this, and I'm in favor of it. But I think we all got a glimpse tonight of how difficult this is going to be. Fred, I mean, to the point you made about, what if my neighbor does this? It's over the counter. There's not an appeal. There's not a hearing. It is, they walk in, you get approval, they sign off, they start construction. That's how this is going to work. And we are all going to hear a lot about this in the future. This is going to become a big deal because it is really easy. If I'm reading this correctly, if you have a 2,400 square foot lot, which is tiny, you can split it into two and put 2 units on it, right? Amy, am I right? This is a big deal, and we're going to hear a lot more about this. And I think you guys did a great job of applying standards that we need to apply, and I am all for this. So I'll make a motion to approve the ordinance.
Great, thank you, Bob. Let's go to other council comments. We'll go to Fred and then Charles.
Yeah, I'll make the second and comment on it. I understand the intent behind this and what the state is trying to get at with affordable housing. I don't necessarily agree with the way they're going about it, especially removing, I want to say, land use from local jurisdictions. It seems like we should be able to control our destiny and our own land use. And there's maybe certain portions of this I don't necessarily agree with, but I can support it. I get the feeling like we really have no choice in the matter. So with that, I can support it. I would suggest, which I think Leva had brought up, and I think Adam, Martha comment on this, somehow we as a town need to get the messaging out on this to residents so they really have an understanding, not from a legally standpoint of what this means, but what it truly could or potentially could entail. And then down the road, if staff or Amy, if you come up with anything that we need to tweak this with or adjust with, I think you should come back to us as soon as you can. I know that cases take time to go through the court, or if you hear things that other jurisdictions are doing that we may be able to use or leverage off of, I think we need to do that sooner rather than later. So again, I'll second it, and those are my comments. Thanks.
Thanks, Fred. Let's go to Charles.
Yeah, so I like the idea of simplicity. I think it's important to clarify to our constituents, this is not an approval of our acceptance of SB 9 or SB 35, but are basically putting in place safeguards that our community has worked very hard to keep whatever types of local control we're going to be allowed to do. And that's what I'm agreeing to. I'm not agreeing to anything that the state ultimately is mandating on this community. So with that, you know, this is not an acceptance of it. It's a protection from it. And let's be clear, it's a good one. And that's why we're all thanking our staff and the people that have worked to it to try to keep a better community. And I think it's very clear and simple in those terms.
Thank you, Charles. Any other comments from council members? And if not, I'll just go ahead and share a few thoughts, just because I was on this working group that was, you know, kind of shaping this over the last 2 years. First of all, I want to thank our planning staff and the planning commission, especially want to thank the planning commission for that catch of removing chain link fences. I think that was key. Also want to thank my fellow working group members and the consultants that helped put this together, and the community members that participated throughout the process and helped us kind of shape this through their feedback. You know, I think my fellow council members said it better than I, but, you know, I just think that this is it's an important tool for managing Corte Madera's growth over the coming years. We're not streamlining any developments here. That the state has already done, as my colleague said, that's cut and dry. What we're trying to do is step in and basically grab what sort of tatters of local control remain and try to really enforce those to the fullest extent that we're legally allowed to under state law. So with, you know, understanding that that's what we're doing here, I think that the work that's gone into this has really paid off. I think we have here, frankly, a really important tool that's going to help us, you know, really put Corte Madera residents in charge of shaping Corte Madera's growth, you know, in the coming years to the fullest extent possible. And to me, I think, you know, that's what's most important. That's what we're trying to do here, especially you know, in the face of what I think residents have rightly hit on as, you know, kind of eroding local control. You know, I think that is absolutely a concern for folks, and I think it's a concern that your council members share too. And I'm just glad that we've done everything that we can in this case under state law to make sure that we're retaining as much control as we can. With that, I'll just make one last call for any comments, and if not, we have a motion and a second, so we can go to a vote. Any last comments, council members? And I'm not seeing any. So Rebecca, if you are ready, we will have a vote, please.
Thank you. Councilmember Lee?
Yes.
Councilmember Mongan?
Yes.
Councilmember Ravazio?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Casissa?
Yes.
Mayor Beckman?
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you.
That brings us to item 5B, which is consideration and possible adoption of an urgency ordinance extending for another year the temporary permit program that was established at the beginning of COVID to let businesses operate outdoors. And I'll turn it over to staff.
Hi, thank you, Mayor and council members. Just to provide a little bit of background here, as you likely recall, June of 2020, the town presented the council, and the council approved an urgency ordinance allowing for temporary outdoor use of the public right-of-way, and in some cases private property parking lots for existing businesses in Corte Madera to expand onto as a result in response to the Marin County Health orders that were in place related to COVID-19 and the pandemic. So as explained in the staff report, that original urgency ordinance was to lapse in November 16th of last year. We came back to the council at that time and recommended that it be extended for a year. That was done at that time. It's really served as a lifeline for a lot of businesses, small businesses in Corte Madera, especially around Old Corte Madera Square. A lot of our gyms in town, I think every gym in town has taken advantage of this program, the Lark Theater. Some of the correspondence related to that is in your staff packet as well. And here we are a year later to the date, talking about extending it again, unfortunately, but the fact remains that we're still, due to a variety of reasons, recommending that this get extended through the end of next year to allow for businesses who While some of the mandates have been relaxed over the last year, certainly customers, their businesses and some of their customers prefer still to use the outdoor space that is allotted to them through this ordinance. And I think they have been able, in a lot of examples, some of these businesses to continue to operate and continue to be viable businesses in Corte Madera as a result. And so I think staff believes the evidence supports extending this, and certainly from a lot of the owners that we've talked, business owners that we've talked to, they are certainly recommend that this get extended as well through the next year. Again, allowing the temporary use of outdoor spaces for expanded capacity and use of for business activity. There are currently 10 businesses taking advantage of this. We expect those same businesses to continue through the next year. Not a large quantity, but certainly the ones that are using it are really, it's critical to their business performance. So I guess the other thing just to note, again, like the last urgency ordinance proposed, if conditions do change, and we're all very hopeful that that might happen within the next year, we go back to normal. There are provisions certainly that this ordinance could be I guess expired or not needed anymore, and there are provisions in the urgency ordinance to end it as may be needed prior to the December 31st of 2022. I'm available to answer any questions that you may have, but that's essentially the urgency ordinance that we're recommending that the council adopt this evening in a nutshell. So.
Great, thanks so much, Adam. Do we have any questions from council members? Fred.
First of all, I think this is totally great for businesses, and I think they really appreciate it. Instead of making this a 1 year, where if I have this right, 1 year from now, it's going to expire again, it's going to come back to council. Can we extend that out and make it, say, a 2-year period? Especially if I have this right, we can nix this anytime we want to, right, through town council? Or is there a reason, I'm sorry, is there a reason why it seems like a 1 year renewal basis?
I think one of the, and Amy, you may have to chime in here on this, but I know that the ability to extend the urgency ordinance in the manner that we're doing it here and override the zoning, the local zoning municipal code requirements was through the emergency powers that were granted through the executive orders at the state government level, allowing us to do that and the town manager to do so. We could certainly consider that, and maybe that's the best thing to do. It's obviously not written that way at this point in time, but we could come back to you if that was desired to extend it again. It's not, yeah, so I think we feel it's probably appropriate to go another year, and I guess to the end of next year is what we're proposing now, and we can always come back and this is a pretty simple item to bring before the council again if we need to extend it again. But I think we're hopeful. Maybe it's more of just our hopefulness of why we ended it again another year at the end of December of next year. But that's, I guess, we did consider a lengthier extension at this time.
Okay. I guess we could pass this tonight for the 1 year, and if we're going to extend it again, when you come back to us in November, December of 2022, look at it more of a longer term type thing instead of keep it staying for another year.
Yeah, and I think just to that point, one of the things we do want to consider with respect to at least the dining establishments is potentially having more of a permanent presence out for outdoor dining, but that may not be the same we may not extend the same outdoor business experience to our other gyms, for example, that are currently using parking areas. in their parking lots for the gym activity. It's a little bit of difference when you're using the public right of way versus maybe private parking lots. But anyways, it's something that we definitely need to consider over the next year. And we do hope to specifically focus on the outdoor dining experience and potentially a more permanent program, especially around the old Corte Madera Square in the next year before the expiration of this current ordinance in front of you this evening.
Okay, and then Amy, I lost track. Are we still under emergency powers because of COVID?
Yes, some emergency powers. Our teleconference meetings are no longer under emergency powers. They're under a new state law, but certain things are under emergency. You just have to look back at the orders, which keep getting amended and are long.
Okay, thanks.
Great, thanks, Fred. Any other questions from council members? And if not, we'll go ahead and turn this over to the public. So any members of the public who'd like to comment on this, go ahead and raise your hand on Zoom here or email public comment at tcmmail.org. And we will start with Roger.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for your time. I'm Roger Harrell. I'm the owner and operator of The Cave. I'm in Tamil Plaza, and it's not an exaggeration to say that we're only still here because of the outdoor ordinances and the allowance to operate outdoors. So I just want to thank everybody for working on that over the last couple of years. It's been a lifeline for us as a business. We are currently operating, we're indoors at about 55% of what our normal capacity is right now. And we can't really exceed that just given the kind of public presence and public expectation of how we are to operate. If we go to higher densities, a lot of our families will become more uncomfortable and start pulling out of the gym because they don't want to see the close proximities and everything else. So we're continuing to operate outdoors. I know that we have a lot of families that actually really enjoy having some of their classes run outside, out in fresh air and everything else. So for us, it's been great. We've continued to do that, continue to run classes outside. And like I said, we really can't get to full capacity given current public sentiment and, you know, the safety procedures that we're keeping in place and have been through all of this. We expect things to change pretty rapidly as the childhood vaccines get distributed. But obviously we don't know the timelines on how that's going to go and what impact on COVID case numbers are going to be locally. So anyway, I just thank you for your consideration.
Great, thank you so much, Roger. Appreciate your feedback. I'm not seeing any other hands up right now, so we'll just make one last call. And in the meantime, I'll ask Rebecca if we've got any emailed public comments on this.
Thank you, Rebecca. No, we did not receive any emailed public comments on this item.
Great, thank you. And I'm not seeing any other hands up from residents on the line. So we'll go ahead and close public comment and bring this back to council for a discussion. Who'd like to start us off? Looks like Charles.
Yeah, so I think the emergency extension is good. It reminds me of some of the other stuff we've done. To Fred and Adam's discussion, the marijuana ordinance was one of them where we did an emergency kind of stop on any permits at first to basically decide and see how things shook out overall. And to me, this is a very similar situation where some communities are actually seeing it as a long-term benefit, but they're pushing it, and I don't think it's been discussed with the greater community stakeholders enough. And so it's getting rejected on very poor kind of discussion points, like, you know, and I can take a stance on that. Ultimately, I think that the vibrance and health of a community is more important than a couple single space parking areas or parking lots that have traditionally been underutilized. I think that I would like, if you do explore it, Adam, and we get feedback, that gyms and others are also considered, because I highly prioritize workouts and healthy lifestyles in this community more than just another place to park an SUV. So I just, you know, that's my personal opinion. And I will start by saying I would like to continue to have our community function like this for the next year and hopefully longer in my perspective.
Good points, Charles. Thank you. I think I saw Bob's hand and then Fred's.
I was going to say, this is easy. just read through the comment emails we got from the business owners. We need to do this. We need to support businesses. I'm going to move to approve this now. Thanks.
Great, thanks, Bob. Fred?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and second Bob's motion. But Adam, I would like to see come back later next year again, so we don't do this again for another year with maybe a more permanent type solution, keeping in mind again the community at large. But I think it's great for businesses, and I agree with Charles. I would encompass all businesses and not start carving them up between dining. Maybe need a little bit tweaking, but not start carving out gyms or other types of businesses that they need it to keep their business going.
Thanks, Fred. Any other comments from council members? I'll just say I completely agree. I think, as Bob said, I think it's critical that we do what we can to support our local businesses. They're still feeling the impacts of COVID right now. We all are. And I think even COVID aside, I think this indoor, outdoor, dining, retail, workout, what have you, lifestyles is fun. I think it's an amenity for residents, and I think it's a much better use of public spaces, as Charles and others said, than more places to park cars. And for that reason, I would agree with Fred's point. I would support making this permanent going forward. I realize that's not what we're talking about tonight, and we have a motion and a second. It sounds like. Any last comments before we go to a vote? And if not, Rebecca, we will have a vote, please.
Councilmember Lee,
Yes.
Councilmember Mongan,
Yes.
Councilmember Ravazio,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Casissa,
Yes.
and Mayor Beckman.
Yes, thank you. That concludes our public hearings tonight and brings us to our business items. First business item is 6A, which is a summary of the October 8th strategic planning workshop and a discussion, and I'll turn it over to staff.
Great, thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. I'm going to share my screen to walk you through this work of art that we've all put together. Okay, can everyone see my screen? So, as the mayor said, on October 8, 2021, staff met with the town council to really discuss our strategic planning session moving forward. This work plan is meant to be for January 1st of 2022 through the entire annual year of 2022. So that would end December 31st of 2022. Something the council, and so what we're asking council is to make sure that we summarized and really encapsulated everything that you provided us with feedback. And so what we heard from council and looking at our current work plans, trying to merge the two, what we think we can deliver for this next year. Again, the council broke down 3 priorities for staff. All 3 of these categories are all important. Our intent is to deliver them within the 12-month period. As you know, things will come up. We could have an emergency, a disaster, whatever ends up coming up. We have flexibility to still deliver this plan and handle issues that'll come our way. But this will be a continued conversation moving forward, probably quarterly of updates to see how we're doing. So category 1, there are 6 category 1 priorities that council gave staff feedback to. The first one is fiscal sustainability. Obviously, everything we do really starts with that. The second one is land use. The big item this year, as we all know, is the housing element. And so we'll be very busy doing that. Climate hazards are priority 3. Within it, again, it's implementing those adaptation projects that staff has identified and summarized in the report. We have the completion of a PG&E undergrounding study that is coming our way in the next 2 months, and really bringing that forward and seeing what we can do to make our community safer in that area. All issues related to any sea level rise or flooding issues, I'll just call it flooding issues at this point. We want to continue to do the good work of maintenance and improving our infrastructure there. Wildfire egress, ingress, reducing the town's carbon footprint is a big one for us moving forward. Disaster preparedness is always under climate hazards for us. Under the town's carbon footprint, there are 2 items for discussion for the council. One is right now we're listing as a climate action program manager. It could be a sustainability coordinator. It could be a position that has a planning and public works background. So I'm happy to talk to you about that. Staff is working with the mayor currently, as well as our climate action committee, to really see if how we can develop that position and recruit potentially that position. Bringing back the Climate Action Committee and really defining what their role is moving forward and helping us reduce our carbon footprint moving forward, and bringing it into, you know, all decision making with staff in this area. When we bring, you know, things to council, we're thinking about the climate action side of things. Town operations, obviously this is a huge one for us. We're moving. So we're going to be moving in early January, our town hall operations to a temporary facility over at Hunt Plaza. And we're completing our reorganization of the building department. The other one is cybersecurity. Cybersecurity was a priority one from the last work plan. We've completed the analysis in the report. It's one that we haven't brought to council and made it as a public document because that really outlines some of the vulnerabilities within the town. And so town staff has looked at that, evaluated it over the course of our temporary move to Hunt Plaza in the next 3 months. And then as we work our way back to the full-time town hall facility in 2023, we will meet all cybersecurity recommendations from that report. And as we complete those items, we will report those to council. So really, from the work plan of last year, we've identified what the vulnerabilities are, and we're going to implement those as quickly as possible over the next 18 months. Number 5, there's been a lot of discussion within the community over town park restroom issues. And so one of those is we're going to immediately try to incorporate the community center and offer our bathrooms at the community center to the public. And with that, you'll see another item to really allow us to be open 7 days a week is that attendant position within Parks and Rec. So we have someone at the front as a building attendant, but also someone that can interface with the community, 7 days a week. The other one is diversity, equity, and inclusion. As we've completed this has been a priority for us, but as we just completed our last work plan, this is one of those priorities for staff and council. Lorena Barrera, our administrative analyst, just completed a report and did a lot of work for the town of Fairfax. She's going to continue that work over with us. We're going to provide a report to council and develop a program from that conversation with council. And really our intent is to include all staff, council, and commissions, and really bring, diversity, equity, and inclusion into all decision making within the town. So when you think about how we take climate action and build that into our decision making and everything we do, we want to do the same thing with this category here. And so we believe we can do that. It'll be a 2-step process: bring the report to council, develop the program, and immediately institute training on all levels of the town. And then from that, we'll take those successes of the town and build it into next year's work plan and keep the momentum going. Category 2 is traffic and infrastructure. We're always looking at ways to improve circulation, road work, flood control, and our town hall project. And so those are outlined in this report. RJ and his team will be very busy in that area. Community events, the council really asked staff to really focus on promoting and supporting townwide events. And so we've put some opportunities and some examples within this report as well. Customer service is always a big one. 2 of them that we're focusing on and will continue to do is digitizing our services. We think, digitizing all of our documents will be so helpful for public records requests in planning and building and admin. We think it's just going to be a great service to our community. And so we're going to work on that heavily this next year. And then townwide communications, keep going. We can always do better. We have a lot of recent examples. It's a tough one. We are focused on it. We have the staff and capabilities. We're going to continue to make that a priority. Fee schedule update. So we haven't updated our fee schedules across all departments in a while. And so we're going to bring that to the council, but we're also going to bring it with the lens of equity, how we approach our seniors and safety and sustainability. And so and that'll also be part of our equity report as well. And so we'll bring that lens into the fee schedule conversation and update. Economic development's a big one. We just talked about it on the last business item, parklets. but also what is our vision for Old Corte Madera Square? We're going through a big master planning process for Parks and Rec and all of our parks and facilities. There's a discussion of, some of our fields and how can we improve those both at San Clemente Park, Cove School, and Town Park, and what are some opportunities there? As you know, those two areas, specifically those two parks, there's a portion owned by the school district, the Larkspur Corte Madera School District. And so staff has been, Councilmember Lee, as well as, our director, Ashley Howe with Parks and Rec, and myself with Rebecca Vaughn, our assistant town manager, have been working closely with the school district to see in areas where we can submit grants and do some work together to add that to the master planning process. Category 3 is category 3, but it's just as important. Quality of life issues are a big one for our town. And so those areas where we can always improve the town operations and services, we want to do that. We've heard from the community, the discussion of short-term rentals. We don't receive a lot of complaints as town staff regarding this, but we have had a number of comments from the community and concerns about it. So we are positioned to bring something to council, actually through the Planning Commission and to council, any recommendations in this area. Sustainable beautification is a big one. So restoring our ecosystem and planting natives when available, that's something we want to focus on as well. And we're going through our drought, so there's a lot of opportunities here. So we'll be evaluating this closely. The vision for Park Madera Center, it's a big one. We've talked about it pretty extensively. The council, we heard the council direct staff to really start with the finances of it. So we currently have a number of bonds and debt on the current shopping center itself. So we are going to take this item to the finance subcommittee to review the debt service and our current bonds and evaluate just from a fiscal standpoint, provide a report for council as a first step so we understand the financial implications, short-term, long-term, for the shopping center, and then to get direction from staff to move forward with economic development. You have a master planning process going on right now with Park and Rec. We're also going through, all the, our housing element now as well. And so this shopping center is going to come into a number of conversations moving forward. And the other thing is everything else, anything that comes our way, we'll add it as we go. And with that, I'm going to stop right there. Within these 3 categories, as you move on through the staff report, what we did is we actually, under each of the categories, so it starts with fiscal sustainability, we gave you examples of what staff is planning to meet those expectations of council moving forward. I'll stop there. You have the entire team on this call. If council has any questions in a specific area or category, we're happy to jump in and answer those. So I'll turn it back to you, Mr. Mayor, and stop sharing my screen.
Great. Thanks so much, Todd. That was fantastic. Let's go to questions from council members now. Do we have any questions? And if not, Fred, go ahead.
Yeah, I got a few, Todd, for you. One is under DEI for that program. You mentioned decision-making. Does that extend to anybody doing business with the town as far as either consultants, people we contract with for bid out projects? Will that extend out to those types, to, again, anybody doing business with the town?
It's a good question. I'm going to turn it, hey, Lorena, not to put you on the spot, but can we bring Lorena over, Rebecca?
We just, I'm going to jump in just for a second because we have to be very cautious in doing that because of the proposition. So certainly the town can look to very much opening up and promoting business opportunities to diverse communities and contractors, but we cannot give a preference under state law.
Okay, so that's something I guess we figure out how to consider that under the program without violating state law. Okay.
Right.
Just a couple more, Todd. Under the fee schedule, I'm looking at page 6. It says sanitary district, parks and rec, and then building, planning, and public works. Are the fees for, I want to say, the enforcement related items such as, traffic fines, dogs off leash, I'm not sure if that's where that's included in here. And I guess I'd rather have us do all the fees at once instead of doing these fees and then next year we're looking at different fees. I don't know what the category is.
I appreciate that. So the two separate things, it's something we could bring probably on the same council meeting, but that would be the bail schedule. So that would be something where we need to update, our parking, all of our ordinance within our bail schedule. It's something we would bring to you separately.
Okay, but it would be included under the fees. This way we know in 2022, all townwide fees were reviewed, analyzed, and approved by town council. So we're not doing a piecemeal down the road.
Understood.
Okay, and then same page, but up above, where it talks about park and recs and 2 movie nights at town center, research options for a food truck. I would like to see something on the east side, and instead of just doing 2 movies at Cove and food truck, if they can figure out something to do with the Cove School, same type thing. It could be movie night, food trucks. I just think that there's a lot of younger families now on the east side that can bike over to Cove. And I think it's something that they would enjoy during the summer. So I just think we need to look at that equity and figure out if we're doing stuff on one side. It does not be tit for tat. But even I think there's a thing in here about doing some art programs or art shows. Same type thing, I guess, see potentially partnering with the Cove and using their facility for something like that. We just have to figure out, or you guys can figure out how to do that.
Yep, and I can tell you that Ashley and her team have been focusing on that. So we're thinking townwide. We want to hit the 4 corners of the town. And so any opportunities, we're going to do it. And Ashley has built a really great relationship with the Corte Madera, the Larkspur Corte Madera School District that we haven't had at the staff level since I've been here. So it's really exciting.
Okay. And then one last question on a high level, because I know we're off because of the timing, because we kind of flipped this to a yearly basis versus April to April, we put it on a calendar year. How do we, or have we already done it, close out the old work program or the work program from last year? How do we close that out so it's officially done type thing, and then we move on with the new?
Yeah, so what staff has done is we have closed it out. We do it as an operational thing. Anything that we've missed, we'll carry it over into the next work plan. So you won't see something that just all of a sudden goes into the abyss. If it's something we're not gonna carry over, we would bring that to council and share with you why we're not doing that.
Okay.
And then so as far as,
go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, I'm sorry.
If there's any you do carry over, maybe you can do this in the new work plan, just asterisk it somehow, so we know that's a carryover from last year.
Okay, sure.
Thanks. Good job, by the way, on the work plan, totally detailed.
Thank you.
Great, thanks, Fred. Any other questions from council members? And if not, I'll just ask a couple quick ones. So one question I had on climate hazards, I saw retaining wall and flood control repairs. Unless it's, I might just be blanking, but I think that was an item that I had not really heard about before. And I was wondering, does that tie into the climate adaptation assessment that we did, or, someone might say half did, in that we still need to come back and fill it out with regards to flood protection for the low-lying areas of town? Is that, does that kind of factor in here, or do we have a conceptual time frame for that? I realize you guys have your plates full for the coming year, but I just want to make sure that it doesn't fall through the cracks and get kicked, continually pushed back a year forever. So I don't know if you have anything that you can speak to on that.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So we didn't highlight it in the previous staff reports or strategic plans, but in reality, we've always been doing it. It's pretty common. We're going to have probably a couple retaining walls that need to be installed over the winter, and some pumps are going to go down and some pump stations are going to need work. But I think having gone through the planning process multiple times now, it made sense to kind of bring that to light as part of the documented plan. And sorry, was there a second question about the climate adaptation assessment?
Yeah, so first I was kind of asking whether that ties into the climate adaptation assessment, and it sounds like what you called out here is actually more just routine, routine stuff that you guys have been doing all along. So that's great. I was just curious, so do we have a conceptual timeline yet with regards to when we're going to come back and sort of finish, if you will, the climate adaptation assessment with regards to protecting the Bayside part of the town from sea level rise and flooding?
Yeah, Todd, I was going to add a couple things unless you want to take the lead. I was just gonna say, I know we are doing the Paradise Drive Complete Streets, which does have a consideration of adaptation measures. So that's one item. And then we're also doing the sewer master plan and storm drain master plan that will also have some analysis for sea level rise. So there is going to be some engineering and studies that will help support those further community discussions. And then I'll kind of pass it on to Todd about timeline for those discussions.
Yeah, I think as RJ said, I think there's some really good projects right now, shovel ready, where we're going to take advantage of and start checking the boxes and doing the work to really re-engage the community and start this process. Is going to be a substantial effort. And I right now, if I had to say as we go, because this is a pretty aggressive plan, it probably wouldn't be in the next 12 months, but we could start to position that conversation, towards the end of the work plan headed into the next. We can always change it as well. I mean, this is for you all to give us the direction, but there's some projects that we really need to deliver on the public works side, and I'll need RJ and his team to help us a little bit through that. So I think, Mr. Mayor, that's kind of where we're at right now, but
yeah, no, that's fine. Like I said, I just wanted to make sure that it's not going to become something that's continually punted back year after year after year and then just never gets done. So thank you for answering that. And then the other question, the DEI section, I think this is fantastic that we've got in the work plan as a category 1 to really look at our operations and introduce a DEI lens to that. I feel like, what I'm wondering about is kind of like bigger picture in terms of like the way the structure of the town impacts residents. Like, are we planning any sort of like evaluation of our town's policies or the code or anything like that, just to look through and kind of give that, I would say an overdue kind of look through. And I see Lorena just put her hand up, so she may have something to add. But I think, what I was just wondering, there's like bigger picture, like how does the way that the Corte Madera operates, or how do our policies or codes or whatever impact residents across different backgrounds? I don't know the answer to that, but it's just like, something that I wanted to hopefully bring up for discussion here.
Yeah, and I'm going to let Lorena jump in because she's our expert. She's the one that's going to do the work and deliver this for us. But two things, and one, Adam just reminded me of something also on your previous question, Mr. Mayor, so I just want to speak to it. But I think once we're done with the housing element, planning is going to be positioned better to start to focus on the assessment, right? Bringing back the adaptation assessment, focusing on that, on our neighborhood. So that I think is a realistic time frame. And we will continue to make that a priority from a staff level as a promise. The second piece is, I think, and Lorena can jump in here right after me and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the first step for us is to kind of give you a report where we see ourselves currently, what we're doing well, what we're not, those areas for improvement, develop our program, complete the training, right? And so complete training. So we're all speaking the same language. We all have the same education together, and then we start to incorporate. It may take us 12 months just to do that. I mean, that's a lot, right? Because then we're going to develop it into all of our decision making, and like the examples you just gave. Yes, that's what we want to do, right? We want to bring it into everything that we do. So on every staff report, when you see, on the environmental impact, we want to have this. We want to talk about this, diversity. Like, are we meeting the requirements? So from the way we make our decisions, to the way we hire people, to the way we promote people, everything that we do, we want it in our decision making. And with that, I'll turn it over to Lorena because she really has the background and vision for this.
Great, thank you. It looks like Lorena is on as a participant, so I'm just gonna allow her to talk here.
Hi, can you all hear me?
Yes.
Good evening, everyone. So what Todd said is exactly correct. From all of the research that I was doing when I was helping Fairfax, basically everything starts with the town, and we are the public servants serving the community, and we have to train ourselves to understand diversity, equity, inclusion, figure out where we're missing changes in our policies, where we need to address anything that might seem discriminatory. We include the community kind of in the process, but it starts with us. And once we evaluate ourselves and we train ourselves on identifying all of that and making improvements, then we'll know how to apply everything that we've learned to make proper policy changes for the community moving forward and into the future. So that it kind of just starts with us. And that's why the points that are brought on the work plan are related to staff regarding training and regarding policy analysis and things like that. So it's kind of like the first step into making the bigger changes later.
Great, got it. Thank you so much, Lorena. Thank you, Todd. Thanks, RJ. Those are all my questions. Any other questions from council members before we go to public comment? And I'm not seeing any, so we'll go ahead and open this up for public comment now. So any members of the public on the line who would like to comment on this, please go ahead and raise your hand via Zoom or email public comment at tcmmail.org. And we're going to start with Patty.
Howdy. I wondered on the DEI, is there a place that we can go and see what you're using as a description of the detail of the DEI? That's one question. And then the other is, are we going to be able to take advantage of the bounty of the newly passed infrastructure bill and make something happen locally?
Thank you so much, Patty. We'll ask staff to address those as soon as we close public comment here. Not seeing any other hands up from folks on the line. Rebecca, did we get any emailed public comments on this?
Thank you, Rebecca. No, we did not receive any emailed public comments on this item.
Okay, great. And then a hand just went up from Roy, so we're going to bring him on.
Good evening again. A lot on the plate. I take this as a strategic plan, all of the items listed there, all the projects and everything. And what I don't see is a kind of a simplistic high-level goal. For example, make the residents healthier, wealthier, safer now and in the future. So it might be helpful to take a look and put some high-level goals that are easy to identify. The next item is under the infrastructure improvements, and it's item number 9. Consider extending private sewer lateral pilot program. Nothing screams more equity than making that program permanent. Back in 2005, we were promised the residents, when Sanitary District 2 passed an ordinance to raise fees, that they were going to do all of these works on replacing the sewer and the laterals as part of projects. Those projects, as I've mentioned to the town and wrote many emails, had many discussions. When the Sanitary District 2 does this in project form, large swaths of properties at a time in laterals, it's going to save in aggregate tens of millions of dollars to the property owners. When you do it one-off, property owners will pay anywhere from $10,000 to $25,000, depending on where their house is positioned. They may have the same length of lateral from their foundation to their property line, but the sewer line is not placed in the middle of the street. So I've said a lot on this issue. So I would love to see this made a permanent program, take the pilot off of it, make it a private sewer lateral program, and look at putting together the pieces for replacing all the sewer laterals. The other item is on the sewer master plan. Has anyone taken a look at, we're over here in Mariner Cove, where Bay Mud and a very large earthquake were subject to liquefaction. The sewer lines could very well pop right through the surface of the streets, bringing up other infrastructure like water mains and gas lines. So has there been any thought or anything put into the master plan related to what would the town do, or what would Sanitary District 2 do in the event of a large earthquake and we had that sort of catastrophic event where the sewer lines come up and all the water lines? And that's something that I think the town really needs to take a look at. What happens in the case of liquefaction and an awful lot of infrastructure is destroyed? What are we going to do as a town? What are we going to do? What are the residents? What are we residents going to do? Thank you.
Great, thanks so much, Roy. And I'm not seeing any other hands up from residents, so we will close public comment and bring it back first to staff so they can address some of those comments.
Thank Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. I saw RJ writing the comments down, so I appreciate that. Roy, I appreciate you. So that's exactly what we're going to do. You know, we haven't raised fees or had a fee discussion within the sanitary district for, I believe, 8 or 9 years. And so this is a good one. And it's when we do the sewer master plan process, right, we're going to do just that. What's working well, what's not? Should we make things permanent? Should we actually help more? And what does that look like strategically, big picture moving forward? So that's exactly what we're going to do. And we're going to bring equity into the conversation as well. You know, those that need help. You know, I always say that we are house rich, cash poor in a lot of instances, right? And so not everyone has $5,000 sitting there ready to go and replace your sanitary lines. You know, you never plan on things like that. So as we do this process, we're gonna be thoughtful in what we do. And I really appreciate RJ and his staff, you know, looking at that and putting this plan in place. And so, Roy, we're going to continue to work with you and others to get that perspective to make sure when we bring that report to council, or actually the sanitary district board, they're positioned to make good decisions. So I hear you loud and clear. The other piece, and I'm just going to share my screen because I'm proud of it. It's something we worked with the mayor's office and council this past year. We did the communications plan, but we did just what Roy was talking about. What's our mission and values as a town, both as a council and staff? And so our mission's simple. The mission of the town of Corte Madera is to serve our residents and businesses in a way that advances our community's health and safety and quality of life. We strive to deliver services in a courteous, transparent, and effective manner. We work alongside residents to improve the beauty and infrastructure and character of the town in a fiscally responsible way that ensures the vibrant and prosperous future of all of Corte Madera. And then we list our values, right? It's customer service excellent, respectful, responsive, and effective, operational effectiveness, town officials and staff, two-way communication and participation. So just like Roy you know, not many people focus on the sanitary district. It's not sexy, it's not exciting, it's at the end of the night. Roy stays up late with us, brings things to the table. We're better because of him. We're going to continue to involve him and incorporate his ideas and really evaluate them moving forward. And so we appreciate that. Inclusive, open, democratic, and transparent. We're going to cultivate volunteerism. We've talked a lot about that. The mayor, you know, at our last couple of community chats, we've really talked about that. That's what makes us special. The volunteerism, as Council Member Ravazio in our strategic planning session reminded us all of who has built this town over the years and decades. It's our volunteers. And so it's pretty amazing. And then just to keep our excellence going in public education, business, recreation for the overall town. I'm proud of it. That's what this strategic plan is part of. Something that's missing from that a little bit that we're going to incorporate this year. And it's a big thing. It's easy to say we're going to incorporate climate action, diversity, equity, and inclusion in all of our decision making. That's a big one. It's going to take us 12 months. Yeah, we really need to be thoughtful. We need to be trained. Your town manager is not positioned to deliver that to you yet. As smart as I think I am sometimes, I need to sit back, listen, and educate myself and the team. We need to listen and learn. So that's what this next year is. I'm excited about it, and then that'll get added to our values moving forward. And so those are the pieces that I wanted to touch on. On Patty's comment, Lorena, I don't know if you want to jump in there on her question about regarding diversity.
Yeah, let's bring Lorena on here.
Hi, can you all hear me?
Yes.
Sorry, I'm at Costco. So to Patty's point, basically, and what Todd was saying is exactly correct. We're literally starting from the bottom. So we will have a page that's dedicated to diversity, equity, and inclusion, and provide information as to where we're getting the information, how we're defining diversity, how we're defining equity, and all of that, and how we're incorporating that into our training and everything that we're doing moving forward. So that page doesn't exist at this time. We are starting from the bottom, but we're doing a lot of work and research, and we will have that and do our best to communicate that out to everyone in Corte Madera so that everyone's informed on the work that we're doing to move that forward.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, as we go on that, like everything else that we do, we have an expertise and a gift within the community. And so for those in the community that are passionate about this, that have the background, that can educate us and give us opportunities to be better. We'll include them in this process. We also, I know all 5 of the council members, this is near and dear to your heart. You've given me feedback on it. So those of you that are interested in being involved to help us promote that, we will do that as well. So this is a priority one. We're going to get it done.
Great, thank you so much. Let's go to comments from council members now. Who'd like to start us off? Leela.
Thanks. I just wanted to say I really appreciate the detail and organization of this plan. And I know you've done it in the past. It's the first time I've been involved in it. And I think it really serves our residents well to have such a thorough plan that we can hold ourselves accountable to. So I really appreciate that. I'm looking forward to.
Leela, your audio is kind of cutting in and out a little bit.
I'm sorry. Okay. I'll leave and come back.
Okay. We'll come back to Leela. Any other comments from council members in the meantime? I would just say, Todd, thank you so much. This is a very robust work plan that you guys have put together. 6 category 1 priorities. Granted, I've only been on the council for like 3 years now, but I've not seen it before. So I think, you guys are really coming at this year swinging, and I think your council and your community really appreciate it. So thank you. I just wanted to touch on also a couple of the public comments. Specifically, thanks Todd for pulling up the mission and values and goals there. I think that was key and speaks exactly to what Roy's question was, which is, all of this, what's it getting at? And I think the point is that every single work plan that we do, every annual work plan, that's what we're driving at. So thank you for sharing that. I also just say, Roy, I'm right there with you in terms of making the sewer grant program permanent. And I know that it was not highlighted in the presentation, but in the staff report that we have here, that's actually item 9 under category 2, traffic and infrastructure, is consider extending private sewer lateral pilot program. So just wanted to say that, you're not the only one thinking that. And I think that is going to come back before the council for a discussion in the coming year, it looks like, according to the work plan. So thanks for that. I'll also just ask, and then we'll get back to Leela. I think the 2 public comments that maybe we could still touch on are, one, I don't know if we know anything about infrastructure bill money yet. It might be too early. I realize that was just signed yesterday. But if there's anything to share there, that would be awesome. And then also, if you guys could just touch real quick on kind of what our contingency planning for disasters is as it relates to infrastructure specifically. I think those are both really interesting points that were brought up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I apologize for not answering those 2. So the first one is, the infrastructure bill just passed, and so we're looking at it closely from a staff perspective as well as the town attorney's office. We have a Marin managers retreat in December, and so that'll be one of the items that we'll discuss collectively as a group with the county administrator to see opportunities within the state, the county, and for the town. And so we should have a better idea towards the end of the year of opportunities, but we want to be as aggressive as possible. We have a couple of pretty big projects that may provide opportunities for us within the town hall project, as well as some of our infrastructure projects. So we're going to be really aggressive with that. The other one is, what have we done to prepare for disasters? We've done 2 key things. And so there's a $2.5 million emergency reserve within the sales tax measure. And there's also a $2.5 million reserve within the sanitary district. That was evaluated by the finance committee. Those reserves were formalized by the town council and sanitary district board. So we have $5 million in reserves for those situations that come up to allow the town to speak specifically to infrastructure for a period of months in a worst case scenario. We always want more. We would love to. Currently, the sanitary district has about $10 million in cash and reserves. 2.5 is set aside for emergencies, and the remaining amount of that 10 million is for infrastructure projects. So that's how we're positioned today. We, on every 2 years we evaluate that with the finance subcommittee on opportunities to improve that. When we do the sewer district master planning process, that'll be something that'll be part of the evaluation for council. Is 2.5 enough? Should we consider more? And so we'll evaluate that at the committee level and provide the district some recommendations.
Great, thank you. And let's go ahead and go back to Leela.
me okay?
Yes, thank you.
Oh, good. Sorry about that. That happens sometimes. I don't know why. I was just saying this is my first time participating in this process, and I just wanted to give kudos to staff for the level of detail and organization that's in this plan. Listening to council and to our residents in terms of priorities, and it just makes me excited to see the year ahead and see what we can accomplish. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Leela. Any other comments from council members? This is just a discussion and direction item, so we don't need to make a vote. But happy to let anyone else share any thoughts. And if no, that's a thumbs up from Bob. Okay, great. Thumbs up all around. Thank you. Todd, do you feel that you've got pretty clear direction from council on this?
I do. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Awesome. Great. Well, thank you and all the staff for putting this together. I know that we're all very excited about this, so we appreciate it. And that concludes 6A on tonight's agenda and brings us to item 6B, which is discussion and direction to staff regarding new job classification, which is our building attendant position. And I'm going to turn it over to Ashley.
Good evening. Thank you for having me. Yes, we have a recommended action to review and discuss the introduction of a new Parks and Recreation Department worker classification series. That's facility attendant 1 and 2. One is a part-time position and 2 is a full-time position. And we hope that you consider approving the proposed classification series, job description for attendant 1 and 2, and the salary ranges, or provide additional direction as needed. A little bit of background and discussion on that is that currently the Parks and Recreation Department has 4 full-time positions. That's the director, myself, 1 recreation program manager, 2 recreation coordinators, and then part-time staff that include recreation assistants who serve for both front desk responsibilities as well as programming and scheduling roles. They're the ones that you see when you come in the front desk, and then previously to the pandemic, they were also the ones serving the clients as well as the renters, building setup, setting up tables and chairs, and also breaking down and securing the facility. And then currently before the pandemic, 5 people served in these facility these recreation assistant roles, and now only 2 people serve in those roles, and those part-time employees are limited to 30 hours a week, and some are actually a little bit less than that. Right now, let's see, the department's ability to provide the staff resources needed to meet the community expectations are as well limiting the ability to generate new events and programs. Hold on a second, excuse me. All right, so prior to the pandemic, the recreation assistant staff served in those roles, which really to us is not an industry standard. It's better to have somebody that's equipped with the skills and services to set up the building and do so without. Please walk away. Let me regroup with my office assistant here. All right. So one of the other things that in presenting this classification series is that previously we had staff and renters setting up their own equipment, and this is one step to make sure that the right people are in the position to support those services, ultimately reducing any potential liability, anybody getting hurt. We do have heavy equipment that is very sturdy, and this is one way we see that we can reduce some liability and injuries to everybody. As pandemic restrictions are being lifted, programs and services have resumed indoors. We have our stakeholder groups meeting indoors, and then we also have private rentals resuming in 2022. And we have the lobby open to customer service. We have a department is experiencing increased need and demand for staff time experience already. And when we're preparing for the rentals moving forward, we really need to be able to not only open and secure the facilities, but support those renters' needs and also move forward with meeting the community's expectations and planning all these great services, programs, and events. For benchmarking purposes, the job class descriptions and salaries were reviewed with San Anselmo, Novato, Santa Fe, and Santa Rosa. And we have in the attachments full job classifications, descriptions, as well as some salary ranges for you to review tonight. Outlining the main responsibilities of both positions. The full-time position is the attendant 2 and the part-time is attendant 1. The descriptions are just slightly different, but essentially the same, just in a full-time and then reduced lead capacity. That's operating support for events, classes, and programs, including setup and takedown of equipment and supplies, troubleshooting AV and setting up during events, some custodial and cleaning services, inspecting facility and equipment, interacting with instructors, clients, and the general public, ability to communicate effectively orally and written, open and secure facility before use, and locking and securing it after, monitoring the facility, park and picnic rentals for proper usage and adherence to the rules and policies and procedures of the department and the town, and participating in required training sessions. Let's see. Implementing the proposed facility attendant positions would not only support the Parks and Recreation Department, but it would better meet the needs and expectations of the community. It would alleviate some requests for support from public works and code enforcement teams, which we rely on to support our current services. Facility attendant staff will work evenings and weekend hours to complement the hours worked by administrative and programming staff in the offices. The new team members would be able to support extending building hours, making lobby restrooms available to the public, and extending customer service opportunities. Facility attendants would also be on site to enforce department and town policies and procedures related to indoor and outdoor facility use, ultimately relieving or complementing some services currently provided by code enforcement in town park. And then prior to the pandemic, when recreation assistants served as primary staff for facility rentals, public works team was often commonly asked to assist with extensive equipment setup and breakdowns and then general repairs. And new facility attendant positions would be able to fill by individuals with skills and ability to meet and handle those equipments, as well as perform some maintenance and custodial tasks. Town Council is asked to review and discuss the introduction of this new series. One, consider approving the proposed worker classification series job descriptions and salary ranges, or two, provide any additional direction as you see fit. Town Council review is a two-step meeting process and review, where council will be asked to review the request for a new position, job description, salary range at the first meeting, and if approved, staff would be directed to bring the item back for additional review and possibly approve the subsequent meeting. And staff additionally in the second review would provide draft resolution amendments for compensation schedule B, as well as a draft resolution amending the compensation schedule for part-time hourly employees for the town. Fiscal impact. There's no fiscal impact associated with the request to review and discuss the introduction of a new series. Fiscal impact associated with the creation of the attendant 2 position, which is the full-time position, would be determined by town management and human resources. The estimation for a gross pay for step 1, single coverage for health and welfare benefits, is $6,353 per month and $76,236 per year. And that estimate would increase if the employee elects one or family medical coverage. And there's a breakdown of additional things on the staff report for you. And some additional expenses incurred by adding these positions may be offset by a proposed Parks and Recreation master fee schedule. One element of that is that staff plans to recommend reinstituting a facility attendant fee for facility rentals, which should be an additional hourly rate that would essentially help with, again, the support of setting up and breaking down equipment and being on site to troubleshoot and serve as the liaison for customer service, as well as technical and any kind of facility issues. The Parks and Recreation Commission will review the recommendation on December 6th as part of a larger discussion for the master fee schedule. In addition, by adding these full and part-time positions, the department would be able to reduce the cost of contractual custodial services for the community center. So please, with that, if anybody has any questions.
Great, thank you so much, Ashley. Let's take questions from council members now. Who'd like to start us off? Leela.
Thanks. Just a quick question. So I understand that there were, prior to the pandemic, it says 5 individuals supporting department administration, and now only 2 individuals fill those roles. So do those 3 other roles, do they still exist? Or like, would this supplement those, or would it replace them?
Those were part-time positions. So those were, they filled the dual role of customer service for front desk staff, as well as any weekends opening or closing the gym for different rentals. They're sort of like our utility. And I think it's better for classification for being a building attendant rather than something that's serving dual purposes. So we'll be hiring for people that are directly working for front desk customer service separately. But this, in the meantime, can serve both roles.
Okay.
Essentially extending our hours. These staff are really the ones that are going to be supplementing after hours so that we can be able to provide longer services.
Okay, and then under fiscal impact, it gives the estimated fiscal impact for the facility attendant 2. It doesn't list it for facility attendant 1. Is that because that's a part-time role?
Yes. And essentially, if they have hours, they're going to be closing and securing the building, like the gym over at Neil Cummins. And if we don't have hours, then we're not collecting rental money for that. So that will offset that, as well as the proposed change to the master fee schedule for Parks and Rec.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Thanks, Leela. Any other questions from council members? I will say I'm still just trying to understand, and I think Leela's question just got at it, but this is like this personnel stuff. I'm so bad at it. So I just want to make sure I understand. So we're being asked to approve two kind of like positions here, one full-time and one part-time. Is the intent that we're going to hire both a full-time and a part-time attendant, or is the idea just to give you that flexibility to tailor whether it's full-time or part-time depending on needs?
The intent is to introduce the classification series. It's something that we can't hire for right now. If we have the full-time position, that's our highest priority because they're going to essentially be the most available. These are irregular hours, especially if we have rentals. We could have a facility rental that is, a Monday, Tuesday, 1 week, and we could have, 5 days a week the next weekend. And then we'd essentially be trying to hire for that position. And then we'd also be hiring probably multiple part-time positions to fill that. And those are typically your, college or late high school positions.
Okay, got it. Thank you. That's my only question. Any other questions from council members? All right, and if not, we'll go ahead and open this up to the public. So any members of the public who would like to comment on this item, please go ahead and raise your hand via Zoom or email public comment at tcmmail.org. And Rebecca, did we get any emailed public comments on this?
No, Mayor Beckman, we did not receive any emailed public comments.
Great, thank you. And we've got a hand up from Pat, so we're going to bring her on.
Thank you so much. I just want to say I strongly support the hiring of a community center building attendant. I think that it will really help with the problem that we've come up with the shortage of acceptable bathrooms and just really making the community center feel more like a community center in that it's open more often than not, that you can walk in, use the restroom, ask questions. So thank you, Ashley, for bringing this together, and I hope the council will consider it favorably.
Great, thank you so much, Pat. And I don't see any other hands up, so we will close public comment and bring this back to the council for discussion. Again, this is just a discussion and direction item, and we'll start with Fred.
Yeah, I think we need to go ahead and move on this. I think it makes total sense. It's something that's necessary. It serves a couple purposes. One is getting the bathrooms open, at least at the community center, so our residents and others can use those. I mean, like Ashley said, it may be odd type hours, like on Saturdays, weekends. I don't want to say till 10 o'clock at night, but maybe later in the night or so. And I think the other thing that fills a void also is that for party rentals, I don't think we really had anybody before unless DPW was filling that role for somebody to be on site to make sure that that building is somewhat protected and it's not being damaged in any ways, locking up and that kind of stuff. So I totally support this.
Great, thanks so much, Fred. And I saw Bob's hand.
Yeah, first off, thank you, Ashley, for the most entertaining presentation of the night, for sure. But we need to do this so that we can provide the level of service that we used to provide. And I think that's what we're going to be doing here. So I'm all for this. Thanks.
Great. Thanks, Bob. Any other comments from council members? Charles and then Leela.
I just wanted to say thank you, Ashley, for jumping on this. I know some of the other council were really adamant that this was a priority number, 0. It needed to happen yesterday. And I just like to see that you're the first one to check something off the list of the strategy plan. So
great, thanks, Charles. Let's go to Leela.
Just want to agree. I support this. I think it makes sense to be able to provide the level of service that we pride ourselves on.
Great, and I second all those comments. So it sounds like you've got unanimous consent there, Ashley. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Great, thanks so much. That concludes item 6B and brings us to 6C on tonight's agenda, which is introduction of a resolution to revise the department head salary schedule, and I'll turn it over to staff.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Members of the council, I'm always jealous of Ashley where she can multitask. I can't even walk and chew gum at the same time, so I appreciate that. So this item before you, we're asking that you consider, we're introducing the attached resolution, which if adopted by the town council would include pay increases for the following positions: the Director of Parks and Recreation, the Director of Finance, Town Treasurer, and the Director of Planning and Building. The proposed resolution and revised salary schedule are attached to the report. Again, this is a 2-meeting item per council policy. And so we're asking for some feedback. And if the council wants us to proceed with this, we'll bring this back for consideration at the next meeting. And really what we're doing is your town manager and human resources manager focused on the department heads. Again, we always look at it annually. How do they relate to their cohorts within the Bay Area, Sonoma County, and Marin County? And then we really look and start to compare them, how they compare internally. And so with that, we identified 3 changes that are recommended in the staff report. And the first 2 are related to when you look at the Public Works Director, the Planning and Building Director, and the Finance Director. I have a hard time differentiating the 3 of them. When I compare them to the cohorts, when I look at what they do for the town and provide feedback to me. And so right now you currently have a difference where the Public Works Director makes $130 more a month than your Finance and Planning Directors. And so what I'm recommending and looking at salary surveys, looking at what they do within our own town, I'm asking that we elevate the Planning and Building Director and Finance Director to the equivalent of the Public Works Director. It's a total of $2,100 for the year. I believe that I can offset that within the current budget. The second item is the Park and Rec Director. And so we discussed this when we brought Ashley in. We brought her in at top step, step 5. She was below her cohorts within the area. And so we did a salary survey earlier this year, taking into consideration the current MOU agreement that's been approved with a 2%, 3%, 3% increase over the next 3 years. We looked at the cities of Benicia, Larkspur, Hillsburg, Mill Valley, Santa Rosa, Petaluma, Novato, and San Rafael. The average salary within those 8 entities is $155,000 a year. So the recommendation for council is that we elevate her from her current salary of just above $1,200 a month to $13,333. It's an increase of 10%. It puts her there annually at $160,000. It's where her cohorts are within the town as they relate to their cohorts and salary surveys. We think it's the appropriate place for her to be within the Bay Area salary survey, taking into consideration the out years of the 3% increases for 2022 and 2023. She will be, I believe, positioned perfectly within the salary survey within the Bay Area. And as you can see, we think the world of Ashley. We've always known that we had to adjust this position. And now I think we have a good analysis and recommendation for council to consider. Again, this is something we'll look at annually and bring to your consideration if there's anything that's off base. But this really jumps out at us, and we think it's appropriate for a 10% increase to her top step position. And with that, there will not be a fiscal impact because staff did put that 10% estimate into the current budget as a placeholder. So it is in the budget if council wishes to give us that recommendation or bring it back to you at the next meeting. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Sorry, thanks, Todd. Any questions from council members? And looks like I have just one quick question. Again, this is my weak point here. So we have the compensation schedule Cs that are attached to the resolution for year after year, and those step ups that we see, like the same, like say the step 2 for the same position from year to year, when that increases from year to year, that's just based on the contract with the MOU, the MOU with the labor group, right?
That's correct.
Okay,
that's correct.
Got it. Thank you. That was my only question. Any other questions from council members? Leela.
Sorry, just a quick one. So as far as kind of equalizing the department head positions, I'm just curious how you think about, right, obviously they can all be equal, but then there's also the comparison sort of with their counterparts in other jurisdictions, like what you were talking about with Ashley. And I just wonder how you sort of balance those two, right? Like it's great to make them all equal within our town, but is that throwing off that balance then of where they sit with their competitors?
Great question. And so it's not, that's why I do look at that closely. I spend a lot of time with that because when I recruit and retain my people, we're selling them something, right, of what we're about and what we're doing. And I want them to be, I want to be consistent as possible when they look at their like you just said, they look at their cohorts in their respective positions in the Bay Area, as well as their cohorts within the town. Like, how do you, and it's a tough one. And so what I try to do is I first focus, and I use human resources to really be my offset for this. But I first look at where do they each relate in the Bay Area. And so we look at the 8 agencies that I gave you. Those are usually the comparisons we'll look at. And so I go, where do they rank? And usually, if you look at it historically, the council and at my recommendation, we placed our department heads in the top third to their cohorts in the Bay Area within those 8 or 9 or 10 agencies. And then, so that's my first step. And then my next step is to look internally where they're at. And you know, people are all over the place when you look at your planning and build, like look at planning and building. They accomplish 2 things, 2 departments. You look at the sanitary district and public works, 2 departments. You look at finance, quite frankly, for me, the finance person is the most important position in this town, right? You can't do anything without a good finance person. So they're all in the top third, so they're consistent amongst their cohorts. And then when I looked at those 3 positions specifically, there was a difference of about $130. And it didn't make sense to me because when I stepped back and really focused on how much my expectation of them is, how much I rely on them, what they provide this town, I couldn't tell you. I couldn't tell you, not like I'm looking at trying to give a recommendation who's more important than the other. I'm not. It starts with where they are with their cohorts, what everyone's paying for that position. I can't differentiate those 3 positions. And I think they should be, my recommendation is that we should consider them being the same. I hope that answers your question, but I do look at, you know, you look at a number of factors, but I always start with what is your position and how do you relate to your cohorts if it's an apples to apples comparison. That was number 1. A few years ago, one of the things that jumped out at staff and the council was our planning director. You know, I think historically there were some issues with the planning director before Adam. Historically, and what the council did at the time, the recommendation is they were like 20% below where they should have been. And so obviously we have a great high energy, you know, director. The council rightfully put him where he should be with his cohorts. And I think there's still a little bit more adjustment to be had. And I think it's small, but it's important to them. It's the $130 adjustment.
Great, thank you. Any other questions from council members? All right, and if not, we'll go ahead and take public comment on this item. So any members of the public who'd like to comment, go ahead and raise your hand via Zoom or email public comment at tcmmail.org. And I'll ask Rebecca if we got any emailed public comments on this.
We did not receive any emailed public comments.
Great, thank you. And I don't see any hands up, so we will go ahead and close public comment and bring this back to the council. And this is another discussion and direction item. Who'd like to start us off? Go ahead, Fred.
Yeah, I can totally support this. I think it's important that we stay competitive with other towns or cities to retain staff. When you look at the work program from last year and also for the upcoming year, you go on top of their regular duties and assignments. This is all these other things that they're going to be accomplishing. It's truly amazing. Can't compare it to other towns. It's just truly amazing what staff gets done. With respect to Ashley, I served on Park and Rec, I think, for 6 or 7 years. To me, there's been like a 360-degree turn on that department. It's been totally professionalized, totally organized, high-level customer service. She recognized what's needed in the community as far as like after care center and before care center. She recognizes what the need is, and then she figures out how to fill that gap, but it's done in a totally professional manner. So I think she was a great hire for the city. And I think we should do everything we can to retain her. So I totally support all the changes.
Great, thanks. Let's go to Bob.
Yeah, I support this as well. Far and away the best set of department heads I've seen in my considerable time on the council. And I cannot tell you all how important that is, because it makes our jobs so much easier and simpler, because we are dealing with important issues and what we can do to make the town better instead of dealing with problems. So I am all for this. And thank you, Todd, for your job, all the work you've done in bringing them in. Thank you. I'm all for this. Bye.
Well put, Bob. Thanks. Let's go to Charles.
So I take a little bit different tact. Ultimately, I think, when you talk metrics about staying competitive with peers, I get worried, right? Everybody's trying to stay competitive with peers in salary and hourly fees now. And I think that's an easy no-brainer. I think what I see is, and the question I like to ask now is, are we having fun, right? Are we doing a good thing? Are we inspired? And our directors are inspired. They're inspired by the leadership, but they're also empowered themselves, and they take ownership and make this community better and meet the mission statement. And it has nothing to do with money. So that's why it's so easy then to approve the money, is because they aren't just doing it for a carrot, right? They're doing it for the joy. And I think that that's an important thing to acknowledge, and what we're really feeling in our hearts, and why we're making this decision, and making them feel valued, not just bought, right? So I wanted to put that out there because I think it's a broader context that everybody's dealing with in this quarter. So
good points. Thanks, Charles. Any other comments? Silence will be presumed as agreeing with what was previously said, and I also agree with what was previously said. So I think we've got unanimous consent there as well.
Thank you. Thank you.
Awesome. Great. Thank you. That concludes our business items for tonight and brings us to item 7, which is council reports. And we'll start with the town manager.
I have no updates at this time, other than I'm just really proud of the staff, the council, our boards and commissions. That work plan, I do compare ourselves with others because I'm competitive, and I'm proud of what we're all going to accomplish together this coming year. It's good stuff. So thank you.
I have always said, I really do think that Corte Madera operates at the highest level of any of the Marin cities that are not like, Santa Fe and Novato. I think among all of this 9 smaller cities, I think we're at the top. I think we're doing fantastic, and that's all thanks to our incredible staff. So thank you, Todd. Let's go to council member reports now, and we'll start with Charles.
Nothing to report, but I will have a TAM meeting this Thursday, and at the beginning of the month, have a few others that I'll be able to report on the December 7th meeting.
Awesome. Thank you. Let's go to Leela.
I just had a couple. I did attend the countywide priority setting committee meeting last week. This is a committee that figures out how to allocate some federal funds that the county receives related to housing and related issues. And then my other report is the turkey trot is happening. You may have seen the signs around town or on the reader board. We have even secured a local celebrity to be there. Mayor Eli will be in attendance. So we see a lot of enthusiasm about this community, and I'm really excited to be bringing it back, and hope as many people can make it as possible.
Awesome. Thank you, Leela. Let's go to Bob.
No meetings to report, but I just wanted to thank Public Works and staff for the completion of the Paradise Drive Sidewalk Improvement Project, which is working really, really well. Great project. And just to give you some perspective, we actually started talking about that, I think, at least 5 years ago on the Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee. And we have gone through a number of meetings. We got tons of public input, but it all paid off because it's turned out to be really, really good. I was there the other day watching kids use it to go back and forth to school. So thank you, Public Works, and thank you, everybody, for your hard work on this. Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks, Bob. Let's go to Fred.
Yeah, this will be quick. I attended the second housing element workshop. Compliment to Adam and the team and the consultants. I think they're doing a really good job on those communities, the way they have them set up, and even with the mini surveys they're doing in between some of the questions and some of the commentary. I think that's great. And then I also did attend a meeting for 1251 South Eligio Drive. Even though it's in Larkspur, it's their project Home Key. which a lot of similar issues are coming up that came up in Corte Madera. But one thing I think we can be really proud of is that we formed the working group, I think early on. That working group, they're now using it as a model for that project, and Larkspur is forming their own advisory group. There may be some tweaking with it, but again, it's modeled off what we did in Corte Madera with our project Home Key. So I think that's kudos to the town. And that's it.
Awesome. Thank you, Fred. And two quick things from me. One, CMSA is proceeding with investigating whether or not to issue pension obligation bonds. So the board gave its its initial yes to go ahead and kind of write up the bond documents like we all went through. So that I think is a good thing for ratepayers and for the town. And the other thing, Charles and I both attended, I think it was late last week, the second meeting of the MCCMC Water Policy Subcommittee. And just to give you guys a quick update on where that's at, we're still kind of setting up our work going forward, but we established 4 working groups there that I think really kind of highlight and show the direction of what we're going to be looking into. So those 4 are recycled water, local policy and programs, grants and funding, and water and sanitation agencies. So I just wanted to kind of let you guys know, I think that's like a peek at sort of the strategy that committee is going to take going forward in terms of figuring out how do we protect and expand our existing and new water sources there. So that is all I've got. Do we have any comments on the draft agenda for the next meeting? And if not, we have no SD2 meeting tonight and we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Have a good night, everyone.
Thanks.
Have a good night, guys.
Thank
Bye.
you.